I'd like to speak to you about the question of whether nutrition, in other words, tube feeding, and artificial hydration can be removed from a patient, according to Jewish law. Before we get into the question itself, let's look at a couple of important axioms that are present in Jewish thought and Jewish law. The first is that life is of infinite value. The second is that we regard life as a divine gift, which is therefore not absolutely our own. And for both of these reasons, we have to be very careful about deciding when it is permissible to either end life or hasten death through some human means. And therefore we come to our question. And we also have to say something else, which is that although life is of infinite value and a divine gift, when quality of life issues enter into the equation, and by quality of life I mean if there is intense pain and suffering, if someone is unconscious and there's no hope of the person regaining consciousness, or if someone is in a vegetative state, there is more room to navigate within the halakha and more of a basis to either withhold or withdraw life prolonging measures. Let's come specifically to hydration and nutrition. The basic question is this: when we are providing nutrition through a tube or hydration in that way, are we feeding a patient or are we providing medication? If we are feeding a patient, there are no grounds for withholding or withdrawing what we are offering the patient, because we have an unconditional obligation to feed anyone who is in need of nutrition and hydration. If we regard this as a medical procedure and there is a quality of life issue, then there are grounds for withholding or discontinuing hydration or tube feeding. So this matter was debated in the Committee of Jewish Law and Standards by Rabbis Dorff and Reisner. Rabbi Dorff's position is that this type of feeding is medication. This is not the way in which a person normally ingests food. And as opposed to the case where we put the food before someone and that person himself or herself takes in the food, what we are doing here is, in a sense, injecting that food into the person. This he regards as a medical procedure rather than the normal act of feeding someone. Rabbi Reisner disagrees and says the effect is to provide nutrition, the effect of tube feeding and hydration, and therefore the obligation to feed the patient remains regardless of what state the patient is in. And this is reflected in the Guide to Health Care that was published by the Rabbinical Assembly. It includes 2 paragraphs, and a person may choose either of those paragraphs. In one, the person says that he wants hydration and nutrition to be continued under all circumstances, even if, for example, he or she is, as far as we can tell, irreversibly unconscious or in a vegetative state, whereas Rabbi Dorff's position is reflected in another paragraph in which it is stated that if a patient wishes, he can direct the family and the doctors to withhold or withdraw nutrition and hydration if he or she is in a terminal state and is unconscious, in a vegetative state, and therefore there is no hope that this person will return to a normal life.